welcome to KoshienCast, the podcast where we just might evolve within the episode. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
Alright, so welcome, Matt. Always good to have you here.
Always happy to be here.
So this is the 7th week of the winter anime season. We will be covering every sports anime that aired between the 12th and 18th of February, including the final episode of Long Riders. So, exactly. So Long Riders finished up last week, actually, but we split up the episodes over 2 weeks. We're going to be covering the last one today, and then hopefully in the near future we will be putting up a review for all 12 episodes for all the diehard Long Riders fans out there.
Yeah, all 12 of you, I assume.
Yeah, I'm just glad we got through it in one piece.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, I think we can just dive right in to our first show of the week with Yowamushi Pedal.
Okay, cool. So this week we have a follow-up in the match between Naruto and Midotsuji. Midotsuji similarly bets to give up his position at Kyoto Fushima and will offer to ride for Sohoku for the Sohoku during the Inner High if he loses, so that way that there's an even exchange between the two of them. And so they start racing. It's pretty even. They have a lot of back and forth for a while, and eventually Naruto pulls out pretty far ahead of Midotsuji, and who should show up but Ishigaki, who is the former captain of Kyoto Fushima, who is no longer the captain. He's now retired, and he mentions to the two underlings there of Midotsuji that, you know, he's actually about to evolve, and he does, and he starts riding super fast. And that's about what we get, and then it's back to being about even. Naruto realizes that he needs to shave away everything if he's going to be able to succeed against Midotsuji, and he throws out his water bottle and his saddle, and but in the end he loses, and he does resolve to give up being a sprinter.
And that's it.
Did I miss anything of importance there?
No, nothing fundamental. It was a pretty straightforward race episode.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Matt, why don't you just, what did you think?
Well, I guess I'll key in first on one comment you made about how there was an even balance in terms of what they were betting. And so Naruto was betting that he would give up being a sprinter and turn into an all-rounder, whereas Midotsuji was betting that he would not race for his own team and he would join Sohoku at the Inner High and support them.
Right.
So at that point, before the race even started, I knew that Midotsuji was going to win. Because the image of him riding with Sohoku was so absurd, and it was contradicted by the opening of the anime itself, which shows him clearly racing for Kyoto Fushima, that you knew that wasn't going to happen. You know he's going to race in the Inner High for his own team, so you know he's not going to lose this match. So that took some of the intensity out of it for me.
Now, real quick, I'm just going to counter that, because I honestly wasn't sure, because my thought was, I mean, really, how are they going to enforce this? Like, I could have seen it as something like Naruto wins, and then Midotsuji is like, well, I guess I said that, but I'm not going to do it, because really, how are you going to make me?
Yeah, I guess, but
I do see what you're saying, is that at the very least, we know that this bet can't actually play out.
Right, so for any faults that Yowamushi has, it isn't Minami Kamakura, right? So that's something that Minami Kamakura did, where they make a bet, and then the main character loses, and the bet has no consequences. But I don't think that would actually happen in Yowamushi. So that's why it kind of felt like it was clear what was going to happen. Also, everyone just sitting around and talking about how great Midotsuji was about to be. I wasn't quite sure of what his evolution exactly entailed, because as far as I could tell, the difference is that he, instead of just leaning over the handlebars, he now is leaning above the handlebars, and he's keeping his back completely horizontal. And I'm not totally sure what difference that makes.
Right. And if it does, because my big takeaway from that was that Midosuji is just, he's pedaling faster now because now he has this newfound passion because now he's in a do or die situation. So I guess now that he's found this passion within him for racing, like this whole, it's like I could actually lose this, and like what does that mean for me now? I guess that means he has a new drive in him to keep pedaling harder?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
It
don't
always
know.
feels
It's
fake whenever they try to explain why a character decides to pedal harder. You know?
right. Yeah, and that's been I mean, that was a problem with Yawapeda from the past
Yeah.
seasons. That being said, I got a real kick out of the imagery of his evolution, of him of that imagery of a naked version of him actually bursting out of his own skin.
Yeah, it's like he's a cicada shedding his exoskeleton. He crawls out
Right,
and then
and
throws away his own former skin. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
yeah, it's a pretty intense scene. I'll give him that, and it's so goofy and over the top that it's hard to tell whether or not they want you to take this seriously, but it's done with such sincerity. But you can't help but just chuckle at the sheer imagery, and that's what's fun about Yawapeda at
Mm-hmm.
times. And that is something I enjoy from the series, and in that regard, the series does it very well. I did also enjoy the race, just in like there's not a whole lot you can do visually to really mix up cycling, and I think that's what makes again cycling such a tough sport to capture.
And yet so many shows keep trying.
Well, because it's probably an easy type of thing to animate, because there's not really a whole lot of different motions you have to go through with these different
True.
characters. So I think that's where it comes from. Not only that, but you got them in different uniforms. So you kind of get that whole that sort of skin tight outfit. For either gender. So it's like it's kind of a win-win all around. It's cheap to make, and it kind of already appeals to that niche.
Interesting. Yeah.
At least that's my theory on it. I have absolutely no evidence.
Okay, fair enough.
But that's just kind of my takeaway. But but I think something that Yawapeda does do pretty well is that it does capture that sense of speed pretty well. At least it did in this episode. And I think it does that actually to its benefit due to a lower budget with the repeating backgrounds. Because when you see the same thing passing by over and over again, even if you know that they're not actually going in a loop that fast, it does kind of create that sensation in your head of, okay, wow, they're just going that fast that they keep seeing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I think they do a lot to actually. I think they work pretty well with what they have in that regard, and I do appreciate. Again, I always do appreciate shows that do the long shots. In this one in particular, where they had the side by side and just watching the background. Like again, it lets the series breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate that despite Yawapeda's tendencies from past seasons, it actually started and finished this race in one episode.
Right. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that until we get to the Inter-High, and I think that's going to be where the issue is, though I'm doubtful we'll actually make it to the Inter-High this season.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I gotta say, whatever complaints you have, you can't complain about the witty repartee in this episode with lines like, "Are you holding back a poop?" And the reply from Midosuji being, "Are you talking about yourself?" And there was actually a lot more of that, but I just sort of wrote that down as representative of the level of banter.
Right. There's nothing particularly clever there, and it's one of those things where it feels like whoever the original author was, I don't know the name, but they were trying to write like what it would sound like for two high school students to have banter back and forth and trying to mock one another. And either it's one of those things that just didn't translate well to English, or it's they're trying to sound like high school students, but they don't actually really remember what it was
Yeah,
like.
yeah. Either way, it's lose-lose because if you're trying to make them sound kind of dumb, it's like, well, look, these characters are kind of dumb. It doesn't really do much for you. And if you're trying to be witty, you messed that up too.
So speaking of the writing, there was one other part I wanted to mention,
Okay.
which there was Naruko mentioning the fact that Mito Suji is like he's carving away everything unnecessary or something. And
Yeah, who would analyze that based off?
well, because you know what they're doing. They're trying to call back to the previous seasons with Midosuji and how, he has that whole thing about how he's so obsessed with winning that he's trying to basically, shave off everything like his hair that's weighting him
Yeah,
down.
and then they use
Like,
the visual metaphor of him cutting off his own arm because he's whittling
right.
down everything unnecessary, and you're like, okay, well, that's an image.
Right. And it's like, it's not something that I feel like Naruko would actually
Yeah, would
think.
he think about like, sure seems like Madosuji's cutting his arm off right now? Like, no.
it, you know, I just. Oh, there was one other thing too with Naruko, how his nose started bleeding because the race was so
Yeah,
intense.
that was super forgettable and unnecessary.
Right, like I guess they were trying to capture the sheer intensity with this race that it's even wearing down
But
Naruko's
is that
entire
a
body.
thing?
I don't know. I guess it's one of those things we'd have to look up, but I don't really think. Like, I have never heard of that being an issue
Sure,
with pedaling,
and it's not even.
with like running that
Hmm.
hard, for
It's not
example.
even consistent with the show itself because that never happens in the show earlier on, and there have certainly been
Right.
their fair share of intense sprints. But all right, well, you want to move on to another show that exhibits intensity?
Yeah, go for it, man. Go on to March Comes In Like a Lion.
Okay, so March Comes In Like a Lion, episode 18. Uh, it starts off with the study group gang over at Shimada's house, and they're trying to figure out the best way for Shimada to have escaped the trap he was put in the second match of the Lion King tournament, which he lost. They
Right.
argue back and forth, and Shigeta and Nikaido have an extended discussion of very detailed shogi strategy, which is represented through two cats dressed up as Darth Vader and Yoda having a lightsaber battle. Because the
Yeah.
show says it makes more sense than their explanation. Um, Ray ends up saying that it's sort of pointless to argue about because by the time Shimada was in that trap, he had already lost. Uh, Based on that comment and his explanation, he gets invited back to Shimada's the next day to do a practice match just with him. And he gets pretty overwhelmed with Shimada's intensity. And Shimada discusses the fact that he wants to go back to his hometown in Yamagata and have his match there because it's a place that doesn't want anything there, and that's why. Sort of left open ended. Uh, Ray meets up later with his teacher Hayashida, who gives him. They go over his report card, and Ray complains that he's still an average student and he didn't really do anything at school and he didn't accomplish anything. And Hayashida reminds him that he's living by himself, paying his own rent, working full time, and managing his own life, which is more than most students can say, and he should be proud of himself. And then Ray cries because someone is proud of him. And the episode wraps up with Ray getting a surprise visit from Hina and Momo, who are worried about him from the last episode. They find out that Kyoko's his sibling, which makes them all calm down. But when they tell Akari, she gets more worried by it because she realizes what kind of household Ray was coming from, and she starts to understand why he's living by himself.
Right. So I have a question for you,
Okay.
Matt. Is Squirrely Teacher the best show on television right now?
Yeah. Sorry. That was very unexpected. But I love.
So basically, in the episode when Hina and Momo go home, Momo talks about how she wants to watch this TV show called Squirrely Teacher, which is clearly like a kid's show. And when they turn it on, it's like at the opening theme, and there's clearly several movie references in there, including. I didn't recognize them all. I did recognize Lapu.
Yeah, I saw that too.
I think one was actually a parody of One Piece.
I couldn't tell if it was One Piece or Harlock.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, I can't really describe it. Just go watch the segment on YouTube.
Yeah, it was really funny.
It
was really funny. I hope we see more of Squirrely Teacher.
I like it better than the cat show.
Yeah,
I have to say.
I agree. I'm glad they did away with that. But aside from the glories that were Squirrely Teacher, what stood out to you?
I think what mainly stood out to me was the actual isolated match that Ray and Shimada had.
Yeah.
Where he got that imagery of the waves crashing up against Ray, and I know one of the common criticisms of the show is that it does rely a little too heavily on the water symbolism, and I get that it does get a little tiresome at times. But I thought what was interesting about this was that that the way this was drawn wasn't in the normal, just sort of normal standard animation style, but it's actually done as if though it's like a sumi-e painting, like a traditional Japanese painting.
Yeah.
And I think what that said to me was that shogi is an ancient game, much like chess, where so much strategy has been written about the game that it's nearly impossible now to actually come up with new strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it felt like to me was that by going up against Shimada in this site, like basically at his max potential, as it were, was that like it felt like Ray was going up against just hundreds of years of shogi tradition and like unable to just keep it all straight, just all of this, everything that he doesn't understand about the game that he thought he used to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because
and
they have the waves aren't just the typical imagery that Ray has of water rushing over him. These, like you said, they were drawn in a traditional style, and the waves were all composed of script.
Right.
So because it was written out, it was clear that he was being overwhelmed by the words and by the thoughts and the ideas of Shimada. So that was what was overwhelming. It wasn't the depression waves. It was the shogi waves, which was different. So it wasn't that he was like hurt by it. It was just that he couldn't handle how much knowledge Shimada had that he didn't.
Right. And it just exhausted him so much that as soon as he gets home and into the bath, he basically falls asleep and actually almost drowns, is what he says.
Well, yeah.
Which is a little concerning, but it's not really meant to be a serious moment, more along the lines of that this game took so much out of him that it's like all of the sheer intensity from this just drains him completely.
Yeah. What did you take from Shimada's ruminations on his hometown, where he's saying that, you know, the town doesn't want to have anything there. It doesn't want rice paddies. It doesn't want schools or homes or people. It just wants mountains.
So there's a very recurring theme in a lot of Japanese literature and media. I shouldn't say literature, but like I actually read Japanese books. I mean, I read a lot of manga,
Sure.
And I watch a lot of anime, and I play a lot of Japanese video games. That's not literature.
Right.
But it's a recurring theme I notice is that a lot of it revolves around this sort of longing for a simpler time. Away from technology. Like, this goes as far back as stuff like with authors like Osamu Tezuka, who sort of resented technology.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, even today, like, directors like Hayao Miyazaki or Beat Takeshi, who are so sick of the city life, essentially, and they kind of long for a simpler time when they could just live out in the hills. And that was the same sort of sense I got from Shimada when he talks about how the city wants nothing. It's almost a Buddhist-esque view of of living, where you sort of live just sort of in peace of nature, because in Buddhism, wanting is what causes sin.
Mm-hmm.
It's the desire for things, and so if this town wants nothing, that means it's so free from its own desires. Like, it's essentially like nirvana.
That's interesting. I interpreted it very differently, but I can see where you were coming from. Um, he so I based it on basically my understanding was centered on him saying that's why or that's exactly why at the end, and you're like, oh, that's exactly why. What? Why is it that he insists that he needs to go back to Yamagata as part of the Lion King tournament? Um, and when he goes on and on about how the town is rejecting its human elements, um, for me that was a comment more about urbanization, where he was saying
Okay.
that because of sort of rural depopulation, the city was ceasing to be. It was sort of it was
Okay.
evaporating before his very eyes, which is another recurring theme in Japanese literature, by which we mean
That's
anime,
true.
video games, and manga, where we see there's everyone moving to the big cities, but there not being a sustained culture in the country. So what I
Right.
saw there was he wants to go back to Yamagata to do his part to revitalize the town he came from, because the town is sort of fading away, and he needs to bring people back because otherwise it's just gonna keep shedding people.
Okay. Huh. I hadn't even thought of it like that myself. I guess mainly because it's shogi, and so I guess my general thought on the matter is, well, what's shogi really going to do? But if the city is so quiet and dying, then I can see how even like a simple shogi game, not like a simple shogi game, but the big shogi
Yeah,
game could at least draw more
right. It's a
attention.
nationally televised tournament. So he'll bring
Right.
people there physically for the tournament, and then also he'll help to advertise the city by virtue of bringing the national TV crews there.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and so who knows? It's interesting that you bring that up because I could see it either way. Um, and so yeah, no, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, you got to imagine that he's gonna win the next two matches, because at the end of the episode, it's revealed that Shimada lost the third match, and it's um, first to four wins. So he
Right.
needs to win the next four matches in order to win the tournament. Uh, but you have to imagine he'll at least win the next two so that they can go to Yamagata. I understand that this show has defied our expectations in the past, but it feels like there's been enough build up with him insisting that he needs to get back that you're gonna see why.
Right. And it's interesting that you brought up the whole thing about how he was insisting to get back, because something I noticed was a comment that Shimada had actually stated about what he had mentioned, that like, yeah, I got a little too obsessed with trying to go back to Yamagata, and I was recalling back to when Ray was going up against Shimada and his whole obsession with trying to beat
Mm-hmm.
Goto, so much so that he neglected his like actually trying to go up against
Right.
Shimada. And so it's kind of bringing up this whole recurring theme about characters who get so wrapped up in their own little world that they tend to forget everybody else around them
Mm,
or what they're actually going out to
right.
do.
Hmm. I think that was the most important section thematically in this episode. It was nice to see that moment he had with Hayashida. I thought it was a powerful moment where Hayashida recognized the many kinds of experience and the many kinds of
Right.
learning that you can have, especially for a teacher to recognize, like, hey, you may not have done that much at school, your grades may not be very good, but like you're learning a lot more than a lot of the kids here. And sort of
Right.
recognizing that, when I was your age, I was pretty lazy. I didn't take care of myself. I pawned off all my chores on my parents. I just sat around and like played video games and hung out with my friends. and you don't do any of that. You're handling your own finances. That's a kind of learning that few people do, and sort of validating his experience as being just as legitimate as the traditional high school experience. So I thought that was nice. I think Ray needed it.
Right. And it's kind of one of those, because it's a very sympathetic moment, too, I think, for Ray, just on how it's a really easy when you're having kind of a rough time to kind of miss the forest for the trees. Like when you're kind of, when it feels like you're not getting your goals.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to take stock of like, okay, maybe I'm kind of stuck where I was before, but that doesn't mean that I haven't actually made any progress. It doesn't mean that I haven't actually grown in any way.
Right.
And I thought that was really nice. That was a really satisfying character moment for Hayashida to bring up. Look, you're doing more than anybody else is doing right now. Don't beat yourself up over that, okay, man? Like, you got to remember that you're not just an average high school student.
Yeah.
And I think bringing that up, kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of helps me out a little bit with my life as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice little reminder of like, okay, just because I'm not doing everything that I want to do, just because I haven't gotten out of whatever type of work I want to do, and actually like make a living doing what I want to do, that doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't done anything.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so easy for all of us to feel like we're sort of trapped in a routine and not recognize that growth can happen inside a routine.
Right.
Yeah. The episode sort of wraps up with the discussion between Ray and the sisters. Squirrely teacher aside, I think the most important part of that was Akari recognizing kind of for the first time why Ray lives by himself and what kind of emotional state his home life was that he felt like he had to leave. So I think that makes the connection and the empathy between her and Ray a little more meaningful, and we'll just see how it plays out. But I don't think there's a ton to comment on it.
I did think it was interesting because I think this is the first time that Ray has actually ever stated that Kyoko is his sister.
Yeah, and he talked about it very matter-of-factly. She's my older sister. We're siblings. You know how it is.
Right. And I did think it was kind of interesting that Hina just took it like, oh yeah, no, I get that. Okay, no problem then. Whereas Akari is just like, Akari being a lot more experienced is like, there's more going on there. That was not a general sibling spat.
Yeah, that was not normal. That's not how siblings are supposed to interact. There's something deeper. So I thought that was good. I thought it was nice that Ray knew how to make, he doesn't need this 6-year-old to worry about him, right?
Right, exactly.
Anyway, I thought it was good. I thought it was a strong episode as always. I mean, March for the last dozen episodes has been turning in a consistent performance pretty much every week, and we've got 4 episodes left, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm looking forward to seeing how it. And you know what, Matt? Guess what else we have?
We have All Out.
I shouldn't have set you up like that. I was going to say there's 4 more matches potentially in the Lion King tournament, so I think that's what the next 4 episodes are going to be.
Oh.
But you know what other tournament we have? We have the training camp tournament in All Out. Good transition, both of us. So do you want to discuss the new episode?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this episode begins with a flashback for Suna, and we find out that he was brought in a rugby family, apparently.
That's a thing.
Because his father really wanted him to play rugby as a kid and was even looking into getting him into a rugby school. And that's where Suna met Renpei, and so we find out that Suna kind of envied Renpei or kind of idolized him because of how cool he was. He was this sort of isolated rugby player who only cared about winning. And after Renpei kind of starts giving up during the match because he's like, what the heck do I care? This is just a practice match. Like, this doesn't matter. Suna kind of loses it with Renpei and is like, screw you, man. Like, you're not even trying here. Which I thought would have been a little bit too over the top. But I appreciated that he brought it back to the rest of the team, and where the rest of the team was congratulating him. for actually standing up to him. He's like, well, screw you guys. Like, you just keep passing off all your problems onto Renpei. And so after that, Suna keeps trying, and he's just about to give up hope. And then, was it Renpei who saved him, or was it just
No, it
somebody else?
wasn't Renpei. It decidedly was
Okay, I
not
thought
Renpei.
it wasn't Renpei.
Yeah.
It was a different character on the team who kind of supports him after he gets a tackle from Sekizan, and they end up. The team is kind of unified again without Renpei, and they keep trying. Eventually, they manage to lure away Jinko's defense, and they're able to kind of go around them. They score another try, but Jinko is just too good. They come back. They score another try during. Is it during a scrum? Is that what the whole gathering is called?
Well, it's yeah. So they kind of force but it's a pseudo scrum, but they call it a maul.
Okay, a maul. That's right. So during the maul, they get him involved in a maul, and then Gion gets the ball during the maul, and he ends up scoring a try during this. And now Jinko's pretty definitively up, and they've pretty much won the game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and time runs out at the very end, so they do win.
Oh, okay. So I thought there were still like a couple seconds.
No. The very end, they have the whistle, so they won. Yeah, it was fun. I think it was mostly important for seeing the break between Sunao and Renpei, because up until now, it was all about Sunao sort of defending and protecting Renpei and trying to vouch for him. And Renpei realized, the point at which you stop caring about victory is the point where Sunao gives up on you. Because even in the past, when Sunao would have to stick up for Renpei when he was being a jerk, Renpei still wanted to win. He just didn't care about anybody's feelings. At this point, Renpei's even given up on wanting to win because he's so tired of having to work with these people. But Sunao is the one who says, like, I know these guys don't work together very well. I know they're all jerks, but I don't care. I like them, and I want to go to Hanazono, so we're going to go whether Renpei's with us or not. So he almost unifies them despite Renpei.
Right. And I think that was an interesting point was that they're better as a team because they got rid of their star player.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't about, because a lot of sports series, what they end up doing is that they end up sort of inspiring this defeated player, this defeated, like, great player, but he's just, he's lost it, and that's what really brings the team together. In this, they actually managed to bring the team together in spite of this character, and I think that's what made it work.
Yeah.
So I guess for, like, I'm trying to think of an example, but effectively what it's saying is it's more like you can have really talented players, but that's not going to matter if they're not all working as a cohesive unit here.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point, like with a team sport, that's the lesson that every team has to learn,
Right.
Even if Jinko's not the best team, they don't really have any single ace player. They're able to win because of how they work together. I also liked the little redemption that they had for Oharano towards the end, where he got to get back on the field even though he hadn't played in a while. He organized the team really strategically. He came up with some good ideas. People listened to him, and it worked out. My favorite line, though, was when he said, Guillaume, you need to run 100 times harder. And Guillaume responds, he's like, I mean, maybe I could run 10 times harder? Well, no, that's too much. Could I run 5 times harder? Like, he had this where Oharano was super hyperbolic, which is typically Guillaume's thing. But out of nowhere, Guillaume's like, I don't think I can run that much harder. Like, I'm running pretty hard.
I mean, like, what are the logistics here? I mean, let's be realistic here, Oharano.
Yeah, could I run 5? I don't know. How much harder do you think I can really run? So I thought that was fun. I liked the involvement of Ebumi. I liked Ebumi sprinting past Renpei after Renpei had given up. I thought that was a great scene. It was super illustrative of where he was at mentally, that he just didn't even try to catch him.
Right.
I don't know. There were a lot of good hits. It was a really well done action episode.
Yeah. There is one really great moment of... I don't know if it's character growth or character recognition, but when Sekizan tackles Suna, there's this moment afterwards where, he kind of helps Suna up and sort of kind of like wipes him off a little bit. And what I really liked about that is that it felt like an acknowledgement of Sekizan to Suna. Like, because these are two characters who have been in very similar situations. Like, Sekizan used to have to deal with this with a team that just wasn't motivated. He only had one ally in this, which was, oh my god, I can't think of his name.
Hachioji?
Hachi. And, there was kind of this moment of recognition from Sekizan to Suna where he's just like, I've been there before, man. It's okay.
I interpreted that totally differently.
Oh, really?
I mean, maybe not totally differently, but with that scene, I thought it was more of a recognition of the difference between Sekizan and Renpei. That they're both sort of the ace of their team, but Sekizan is an ace who is courteous to his opponents and who supports his teammates, and that was supposed to be a contrast where Suna was realizing, like, just because you're an ace doesn't mean you have to be like Renpei. There's other ways to be the ace.
Right. See, but I guess I kind of took it differently just on the base, just because of how, like, I know how Sekizan actually had, like, this is essentially the same situation with Suna that we know occurred in Jinko's past.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I think they can both be true, but I wasn't thinking about it that way.
Okay. Cool. No, but that's interesting. Was that around the time... I'm trying to get my sequence of events here straight in my head. After that, was that around the time when Suna finally gave up on Renpei?
I think it might have been shortly before that.
Okay, that would make sense then.
But I didn't have the difference in my notes exactly. Anyway, but yeah, it was either before or after that. I can say that confidently.
It happened sometime during the episode. Good. I'm glad we're in agreement.
That I'm sure of. Yeah. So Tenjiku, the team that they just beat, they were in the opening animation. They've had their few episodes. Where do you think the rest of the season is going to go from here?
I think from here we're going to get a setup to more during this Hanazono, or not Hanazono, during the training camp. I think we're going to get a setup for another big team for them to play. Or we probably will get one more big game out of them to kind of close out the season. And then I'm guessing this is all going to be set up so that they can finish up, so they can actually go to the Hanazono prelims next season.
Yeah. I hope they play...
Because I...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I think we have one more big game, especially because we have, 5 episodes left, I would say. So I think we got one more big game against some team that we don't know about yet.
I was wondering whether they were going to have their big game against Ryoin before they end the training camp. Like, they might do some montage stuff of other games they play, and then their last game in the training camp is against Ryoin. Oh. And they get put in their place again and see, how far we have to go to actually win the prefecture. So they have this match where they actually play the best team in the prefecture, realize their shortcomings, and then they spend the next season going through the prefecture, the national prelims, to get back to play Ryoin again.
Right, because this is going to be the game that sets up Ryoin as being the big rival. Because there's going to be something that happens during that game that's going to kind of jostle Ryoin and be like, oh, this is a team we should maybe look out for that nobody else is keeping track of.
I mean, Gion's going to evolve within the match. I'm calling it right now.
Well, obviously. Speaking of which, there was another nice little character moment there with Gion getting the try after the maul.
Yes.
And I think what I liked about it was just Gion's sheer confusion at first.
Well, he never held the ball before.
Yeah, exactly. He had never held the ball. The way he does it, it's not even like a normal tackle. He just sort of gently places the ball down because he has the ball and he has no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is something that's so surreal to him that it's like he's almost in complete disbelief because this is everything he's been working towards as being useful to the team.
But he just sort of collapses.
Yeah, sort of. He's just like, I have the ball. Ugh!
Yeah.
And so I guess, and even afterwards, he's still very shocked about it. And I think it felt a lot more natural than because they do the big like emotional outburst from Gion afterwards.
Right.
But I think that pause beforehand for Gion to kind of collect himself first and finally come to the realization like, oh my god, my work is paying off now.
Yeah. I'm actually a member of this team.
Like, I am actually a member of this team that people are trusting with the ball, and like everything I'm doing is keeping me on the field and letting me play with these people.
And again, All Out is good enough that it didn't tell you any of that. It showed you.
Right, exactly. Just through Gion's facial expressions, just his sort of dumbstruck look, just being completely taken off guard by all of this.
Yeah, that was good. Speaking of which, I was completely taken off guard by the tone shifts in Tiger Mask.
Hey, you made it work.
Yeah, that was better than some of my recent transitions. So we had Tiger Mask episode 19. It starts off, this is going to be a Takuma-centric episode, where we begin the Hell in the Hole, which we've heard a lot about, but don't totally understand. The episode starts off with all of the wrestlers who will be competing sitting in a cave prison. And Odin is one of them, and they all get letters. And Odin gets a letter from his family, and he opens it, and there's wheat inside. And he thinks about Catherine and how much he misses her. And she calls him Henry and tells him that she misses seeing him and wishes him well. And then the coach says that if they tell their family that they're imprisoned in the tiger's den, he'll destroy their communication. And they say, thanks, coach. Okay, bye. Then we cut back to Japan. And Uncle Kintaro doesn't recognize that Haruna is Spring Tiger. And he casually mentions that he promised her dead mother that he'd never let her wrestle.
Sorry, go on.
No, it deserves it. And then we see Tiger Mask is on another date with Ruri, and he won't tell anyone about it for some reason. And they walk past the 2-star Italian restaurant that is inside a wrestling stadium.
I thought it was a mall that they were
it was a mall? Yeah.
It was a mall. And that actually does make sense, but I'll let you go.
I just liked the I didn't totally understand where it was. I liked the casual aside of here's a 2-star Italian restaurant.
It's like, oh boy, we have just say it's an Italian restaurant because they were talking about where they wanted to go eat, and they're like, just say that they have an Italian restaurant here. Why do you care that it's 2 stars?
Well, I mean, if it's 2 Michelin stars, that is pretty significant. But like, it didn't add anything. I mean, basically, I'm gonna skip out on all the back and forth with Ruri and Tiger Mask on a date, and by Tiger Mask I mean Naoto, because he doesn't have his mask on, because none of it added anything. But the interesting part of the episode, which was legitimately interesting, was the Hell in the Hole tournament, which took up most of the runtime, thankfully. So it turns out Hell in the Hole is a secret underground wrestling match that GWM hosts. It is a fight to the death with multiple competitors. In this case, there's 9 different wrestlers who are all released in an open area, and they have to fight their way to the top of a mountain to get free. And so they are allowed, on the way, they're allowed to beat up any of the other wrestlers in the area. They're allowed to use illegal moves. They're allowed to kill each other. And anytime they knock out one of the other wrestlers, they earn a weapon from a flying drone will drop them a weapon. And this is basically... it exists for underground betting, and rich people come to watch this no holds bar wrestling match. You see this introduced with all these rich people talking about it. Mr. X is introducing the contest, and then out from nowhere comes Tiger the Great the Third, who is apparently the boss of GWM. It just looks like an enormous man wearing a white tiger mask. And all the rich people, before they start off, all the rich people laugh at Kevin because of how weak they assume he is. And then the match starts. They're released out into the open. Kevin has to fight Black Python. He bites him in the arm, and it starts bleeding in a very dramatic sequence. He ends up teaming up with Takuma and taking out Black Python. And then Red Death Mask appears. He has to chase another wrestler away who's running away because he's fighting Red Death Mask. They run into another wrestler who tries to team up with Red Death Mask, but Red Death Mask decides to just kill them both so that he can get the 2 weapons instead of 1. And for his efforts at double homicide, Red Death Mask is awarded with a folding chair and a table to carry around with him. Separately, Odin runs into Billy the Kid Man, still a great name, and they remember how they used to be tag team partners back in the day, and they commit to never betraying each other. At the end of the episode, they run into Takuma and Kevin and square off for a tag team battle. Again, I can't seem to do a short summary of Tiger Mask because there's just too much unbelievable content in every episode.
Right. So, real quick, I just want to begin. So, Black Python and Phantom are dead, right?
I don't know if Black Python is.
They suplex him onto solid rock. He's dead.
It just
I don't care if the show tries to tell me he survived.
It just wasn't clear from how they animated it. Other characters were more clearly animated as being killed. Right. And I think it's because of who is doing the slam. I don't think they want to show Takuma killing anyone.
Of course.
So I don't think he's dead. I do think that the people that Red Death Mask fought and the guy that Odin fought are all dead.
See, because I don't know if they're going to do that with Odin or not. Like, because Odin was being portrayed as being sympathetic at the beginning of the episode because, he just wants to go back home. And, yes, that man clearly looks to be dead because that man got slammed got his head slammed into a pile of rock.
Yeah, and then he bled out of his face.
Bleeding profusely and whited out his eyes.
Yeah.
But that being said, I also don't know if they're going to go through with Odin actually killing that guy. Like, maybe he survived just barely and is unconscious now. Because the preview for the next episode seems to suggest that they're all going to team up against Red Death Mask with his mighty chair and table.
Right. Yeah, you might be right. Plus, didn't Ryu get his face crushed already?
Yeah, Ryu got his face crushed. So did Tiger Mask to an extent.
Yeah, and they're fine, so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's actually dead outside of maybe the people Red Death Mask fought, because Red Death Mask is not a sympathetic character in the least.
Yeah, he face-slammed Ricardo off a cliff, so...
Right. He literally lifted him up by the face and just decided, and as he was begging for his life, jumped up and slammed him, off a cliff into the ground.
Yeah, so that was a choice. Anyway, I think overall this was what we want from Tiger Mask.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely. This is just... I'm not going to say it's good, but it's so goofy that it's just fun to watch.
Yeah, it's absurd, the idea that people would voluntarily imprison themselves and do fight to the death on a mountain just in order to increase their rank in GWM.
I want to see GWM go and get permits to have their underground cave prison.
Yeah. Why do they have to be imprisoned?
I want to see where they got the permits to actually build that.
Well, yeah, also there were, like, offhanded remarks about how 2 of the guys fighting in here were traitors to GWM, and that's why they were there. So, like,
Right.
what happens in GWM if you lose a match to Tiger Mask, or it's in any other way fail to live up to their expectations, you get put in cave prison and fight to the death? Like, how are they recruiting enough people for that to be sustainable? Like, how is no one caught on that wrestlers keep disappearing under mysterious circumstances? I mean, their headquarters is in Seattle. Like, they're not in the middle of nowhere.
Right. No, they're not in some. They're not like in like a third world country
Exactly.
where maybe they could do that like off to the side. Kind
No.
of get the
Nope.
kind of bribe the governments. The sort of
Washington State.
Yeah, Washington State. Like, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's special.
It's pretty great, and I love the fact that we're going for like these high society types. Like, yes, I can't wait to watch the barbarians fight tonight.
Yeah, I know.
It's lovely entertainment.
Yeah, it's so absurd. I like. Yeah, and they're all like, they're all critiquing Kevin Anderson. You know, how will Kevin Anderson do?
I love how they have all these different splashes for all of the different wrestlers. And they have like their pictures pop up on the screen, and then it's this very high production affair, like Billy the Kid Man, Red Death Mask, Kevin.
Just Kevin. Why can't he ever get a fighting?
Just Kevin.
Name? Yeah.
It's like Cher. You don't need another name.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting too because Billy the Kid Man got unmasked, but other guys were defeated by Tiger Mask, and they still get to keep their masks and identity. But Takuma wrestles as Takuma, not Tiger the Dark.
Which doesn't make any sense because there's no reason to do that because we still know that Tiger Mask doesn't know that Takuma is Tiger the Dark.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anything, it makes it easier for people to figure out who Tiger the Dark is because they have the same hair. But clearly, having the same hair flowing out from behind your mask has no effect in this world, and no one can tell.
Or the same hair, the same build.
Yeah, exactly. Same voice, anything. Oh, side note, I just had a thought.
For it.
What are the odds that Tiger the Great the Third is Fukuwara Mask?
Oh!
What if that's why his face was revealed back in season 1?
Oh! I'm sorry, I'm really excited. I want that to be the case.
I desperately want that to be the case. Like,
if Fukuwara Mask is Tiger the Great the Third, which by the way is a phenomenal name. This series will have been worth.
Oh yeah, like the idea that they would be setting that up.
Yeah, like the fact that this series could actually have the foresight to do that.
Yeah, there's no way, but I desperately want it to be true.
Speaking of setting things up in this episode, there was one other. So I know we kind of decided that we didn't want to talk about the date, but there was one thing I wanted to bring up about it. Was during the conversation where Naoto was trying to hide his identity for where he's been getting so much money from.
Yeah.
Because he offered to pay for Ruri's meal because they're at a decently nice restaurant. I assume a 2-star Italian place. And Naoto brings up like, oh yeah, I've been getting more money, and then Ruri's like, oh, been getting a lot of business at work, and he brings up, yes, I work on foreign bikes now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't help but think that that's going to come back somehow to bite him in the butt. Like, Ruri is going to have a situation where she has a bike that needs to be fixed, and it's a foreign bike, so she thinks, hey, I'll go take it to Naoto, because he'll know what to do.
But he's never worked on a bike before.
Right, exactly, because he doesn't know how to do bikes.
That's just his cover, because that's what Kentaro used to do before he joined.
Right, exactly. And just another thing that just occurred to me about this date. So there's this moment where they're out in the mall, and they're talking about what they want to eat, and Naoto brings up, anything but wild game. You're not going to find that at a mall!
Yeah, like he had to sit there and think about things he didn't want to eat anymore, and he's like, well, I don't want to eat bears. Like...
Okay, so we've narrowed down the choices.
But like the best part with that was Ruri's response, where she said, "Oh wow, I didn't know you were such a foodie."
Yeah, like that's something that food critics are going out. No, that's the whole thing. They're going up. They're going to bear tacos because that's the new thing.
Exactly. Like, does that make you a foodie that you don't want to eat bears? I don't know. Speaking of something that we have to bear with, do you want to go?
Oh,
Yeah. Do you want to go through Minami Kamakura?
I really don't.
Okay. Do you want to do it anyway?
I'm going to.
Okay.
Okay, so in Minami Kamakura, we have the girls racing. The bear is in the lead and is apparently leading the entire pack. So and they managed, but don't worry, the girls managed to catch up because people ahead of them crashed. Because these girls can't earn anything. And so they figure out how to do the windshield because they had it explained to them before.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, the one technique that exists in cycling anime.
Yep. Ride in a straight line.
Ride in a straight line, and rather than switching off, no, they just make Higa do it the entire time.
Yep. Because she's the one who knows how to ride.
And apparently, we find out that the bike store owner Kurone had apparently informed some of the other teams about some of the intricacies of the court because they got her food, but don't worry, she also told the other girls because Shiki and I don't remember her name, I don't care. They were like, "Hey, why did you do that?" And they're like, and she's like, "Well, don't worry, I gave them information." I don't know. And so they know apparently they know how to turn well now because of the information that Kurone gave them. And they end up in the end catching up to the third years. They still have to beat frickin' Kuma, and they all decide that they are going to they're all going to form a giant windshield so that Higa and Hiromi can race on ahead and catch up to Kuma. And that's where the episode ends.
Yeah. So there's a lot of issues here.
Right.
The first and foremost being that a girl from the cosplay club who is dressed up like a teddy bear has been winning the entire race in a costume on a fixed gear bicycle while yelling the word Kuma or bear over and over and leaving all the other first years behind. This is a girl dressed up in a bear costume winning by herself
on a mommy bike. Let's not forget about
that. And no one can catch up because reasons.
This is the worst freaking show.
Yeah. And like, why do I care about Mr. Bear? And why are they calling it Mr. Bear?
Why is he the rival?
And Mr. Bear's a girl. Like, it's a student at a girls' high school. Why is it called Mr. Bear?
Why? Because she's playing a character, I guess.
But why are you acknowledging
As soon as this character was introduced, I just want to bring this up. As soon as I heard that character go Kuma, Kuma, Kuma over again, I knew that this was going to become a horribly annoying mascot character who is going to have no other trait but just to constantly shout Kuma.
Yeah.
Like, this character has nothing else. It's basically... It's there to get a laugh, I guess, out of otaku who like getting jokes run into the ground. Like, that was barely even a joke to begin with.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is being treated as, like, a serious character that we need to catch up to, it just... Oh my god, I hate this show.
Well, yeah, so another issue is the fixed gear bicycles, or the mommy bicycles as they call them. The only way for anyone to be keeping up on a fixed gear bicycle is if you are incredibly strong.
Right.
Because road bikes are built for racing, and you can shift gears, and they're more... They're aerodynamically designed, they're lighter, they're easier to get moving at a quick pace, so the only way to catch up is if you're incredibly strong and just exceptionally stronger than the people who are riding the road bikes. But no, it's just other random first years who are completely keeping pace with these girls riding road bikes. Like that just,
Right.
I don't care who you are, that would not happen.
Right, and not only that, but it's like, okay, so we have this whole. I was gonna bring this up during the summary because it's like because Hiroko, who apparently is gonna stay as a character,
Yeah.
I guess, like the captain of the swimming team,
Yeah.
who really wanted to get Higa on the team, she's apparently able to catch up to them on a mommy bike because I guess because she's an actual athlete and these girls are terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give it to him, I guess.
Yeah, I know, but it's like this doesn't.
No, none of it makes sense because if this took place in real life, even if they started like a lap behind, they'd still win easily because
Right, like
there's a girl in a bear costume who
to
physically cannot ride, should not be able to ride a bicycle like that.
right. And the fact that we actually, it's like, I get that they're trying to play this up as a joke. And honestly, the funny thing is that, like, the fact that they're playing up this character as a joke eliminates any sort of tension.
Yeah, exactly.
About this entire match. Because it's like, there's no way that the dumb joke character is going to win. That's a character you have once, like, sort of start off the match and like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And then like they have some dumb gag where they fall over because the suit's too heavy, and then everybody laughs, and it's like, oh, that Mr. Bear.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this is the like. Okay, so for example, like in Tiger Mask, they had the foresight to keep Fukuwara Mask as a joke.
Right. Until he turns out to be Tiger the Great the Third. But yeah.
Well, naturally.
Yes.
Of course. So, but it's like, and the worst thing is that this character is still like this character is in the opening with the girls. I don't think Kuma is going to disappear after this race.
Yeah.
I am legitimately afraid that he is not going to go away.
No, he's not.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to linger so much on Kuma. I just want to point out just how much I hate this character.
It came through. Yeah. I want to acknowledge one interaction. They have a booth set up where they have announcers describing the race as it goes. So they have one racer, and then the principal of the school is doing color commentary. And so they ask the principal, all right, so we're getting near the end. Who do you think is going to win the race? And the principal says, well, what's important is for everyone to do their best and give everything they've got, and they'll all be sure to make a fantastic memory. And it's like,
right.
But I mean, I just asked who you think is gonna win. Like, I asked you a question, and you're like, well, they'll all have good memories. It's like, it's not the question I asked.
I mean, I guess you could almost reason that as being the fact that this is the principal of the school. If she says who she thinks is going to win, then she's playing favorites with one of the clubs or something.
I guess. Yeah, it was just funny.
But, I mean, let's face it. The reason why she said that is because the series wanted to give us this great speech about how, oh, what's really important is that they try their hardest.
Yeah, and they have lots of new experiences.
Right, but, I mean, it doesn't matter because the girls are going to win in the end anyway. And we still don't have Sadie McDougal!
I know. I mean, we have, what, 5 episodes left?
Yeah, 5 episodes left, and we still don't have the full cast.
I know. And it's not like she's gone. We've seen her before. She's at the school. She just hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, I know. But at the very least, we got some very solid advice from AOP this episode. Yeah. We had some advice on how to avoid broken bikes. The major catch is to just check your bike before you ride.
Oh. Thanks, AOP. This might break you, but we still need to talk about Long Riders.
I know. Yeah, let's just talk about it.
Okay, so this is the final episode of Long Riders, hopefully forever. Starts off Sayaki, you know, your favorite character Sayaki.
She's basically the cold open character at this point.
Yeah, so it's the girl who sits next to Amy in a class. Turns out she went to Alpaca store and bought a bike. All right.
Sure.
And then the girls are riding together, and they realize that the route they're on has stops where they can get food, and Amy freaks out
Sure.
because it's a biking paradise.
Okay.
All right. Um, the then they have a ways to go on this route, and instead of having dialogue or having to think of some kind of plot nuance, the show just plays the ending theme song over a montage.
I think it's actually the opening theme that they played there. Because they didn't actually have the opening theme play this episode, so I'm pretty sure that was the opening theme. To your credit, it doesn't matter. It's all incredibly forgettable.
Was it the opening theme?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're probably right. I wrote down ending theme, but again, nothing in this show matters. The they talk for a while about actual brevets, and we realize that Amy is not sure how one would put a bike on a plane. And so she visualizes having to strap the bike on top of the plane because she's never heard of storing luggage on a plane before. So that's a
Sure.
special moment. Anyway, they wake up on the second day of their ride, and it's raining. Turns out weather forecasts don't exist, so they're all surprised by this. They're not sure whether they can ride, but then Amy says that she wants to, so they do. And Amy,
And they know how to do it.
yeah, and they know how to do it by buying coats. And then Amy falls over, but gets back up and is fine from there on. Then they all sit around and comment on how good at cycling Amy is and how much motivation she has. And they finish up the ride, and Amy reveals to them that she has always wanted to ride a bike, but she was afraid because she thought she was weak, but now she isn't weak. And the episode wraps up with Amy riding by herself and running into Sayaki, who has a flat tire, and now Amy is the one helping Sayaki change her flat tire amidst the cherry blossoms as they fall. And she asks Sayaki to join all of us. Which is kind of like, are you recruiting me to join a cult? Or, I don't know I don't know who all of you are. I've never met any of your friends. You can't just use a pronoun. And the series ends with the following phrase from Amy, which is special and worth repeating verbatim. My cycling life, which began with a little miracle, looks like it's going to continue.
Well, I'm glad it's not going to die.
But, what little miracle did it begin with? Was it seeing a bike? Because that's how the first
time... The funny thing is that we even flashed back to the beginning of the series where she wanted to. It wasn't a miracle. She talked with Aoi about wanting to ride. That wasn't a miracle.
And Aoi is someone she's known since high school. It isn't some stranger she ran into. She's just like, hey, do you think I could ride a bike? And she's like, yes. What a miracle. Also, I just love the audacity of this show, which had such production delays that, the last two episodes didn't air until 2 months late, that they would dare say your cycling life is going to continue.
Oh no, it's over.
Do they really think this show is going to get renewed? How dare they?
So in their defense, I'm sure they had it plotted out ahead of time. They probably had a storyboard for how they wanted it to end, and they weren't about to deviate from it.
I get it. It's just so funny.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I mean, you're right. And the thought that this show could get a sequel, it scares me a little bit. After seeing Minami Kamakura, I'm much more terrified that that's going to get a second season.
I know. I don't want to talk about either of these shows ever again.
I'm just glad that we don't have to, except for for the review for long writers now.
Yeah.
Something I did want to bring up is that during this little discussion with Saiki that Amy has, she asks Saiki what got her into cycling, and Saiki mentions, like, well, I saw you talk with such joy about cycling in class. Did you guys know each other beyond just, hey, what's going on?
I know. Like, they randomly chat briefly when they get to class.
Right, like, they're not friends. They are barely acquaintances at best.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and Amy had such a strong effect on Saiki's life that she decided she wanted to get into, like, invest in cycling.
Yeah, and Saiki didn't even tell her because they're not friends, so they randomly ran into each other, and then they're like, oh, do you want to join our group that isn't the college cycling club still for some reason?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's not good, but I'm glad to see that the series ended like how we'd called it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, with Saiki.
Yeah, with Saiki eventually joining the club.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you this is how Minami Kamakura is going to end. Sorry, I'm going to drop Minami Kamakura now. I will talk... they had to get one more joke about Saki bringing too much food.
Yeah, like, why is that...
Or buying too much food.
Yeah. It's working, guys. It's a really good joke.
It's a good joke. Sure.
All right. So
one thing I wanted to bring up during the montage, by the way, they had this section where they were getting a picture taken by some random person, and what struck me about this person is that they had a very distinct design, like not just a random character that somebody would have drawn.
Mm-hmm.
To just like, okay, we just need a random person in the series to like take their picture, whatever, just some random stranger. Like, she had a very distinct like double like twin tail action going on, and I'm just very confused by why they would even bother designing this character. I was wondering if maybe this character was meant to be like a callback to like a different series that they had worked on.
Well, you can ask the question, but I don't have an answer for you.
No, I know. I was just very taken aback by this character. I don't know. The series has very little interesting to discuss.
Yeah, so we look forward to doing a series review where we do exactly that.
Okay.
Speaking of very little to discuss, do you want to talk about Teekyu?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, as usual, this season is a little bit different, actually. I said as usual, and then it's a little bit different,
yeah,
but you know.
Surprising the audience. That's what you do.
That's what Teekyu does. This season is starting to incorporate more of the side characters as being they're starting to incorporate more of the side characters as part of the main cast. Like Kondo and Tomarin and Anakov are now officially part of the opening as some of the girls that are hanging out with them. And they're showing up a little bit more frequently in each episode. For example, like in the season closer, for example, like the entire season closer is actually about those three plus Marimo traveling to Namek.
Yeah.
And interacting with Namekians who are riding the mighty moonworm, which I think is actually a reference to Dune.
Oh, is it Doom? Oh, okay.
Or, yeah, Dune. Because I believe Dune was actually very popular in Japan, the movie, when that came out.
Sure.
Like, it kind of tanked in the US, but apparently it has a cult following over in Japan.
I believe it.
And so I think there's a section where the Namekian, it's not technically Namek.
It's Namek.
Obviously they don't say. Yeah, you take one look at the planet, it's like, yeah, that's Namek right there from Dragon Ball. And, but to ride to another house, they're riding on a giant worm, and I'm pretty sure that was like a reference to Doom.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, it's those three characters involved with it, and Tomarin actually is able to translate for them, even though the alien actually speaks in Japanese. I do feel like there was a missed opportunity there to not have Tom as being the translator, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though, we do get a couple of episodes. We get a couple more experimental episodes from this season. Like, we have an entire episode that's pretty funny that's meant to be a parody of Cinderella, where it's Yuri as Cinderella, and Nasuno is the 245 stepsisters. and who torture her by making her trip on extension cords.
And eat ice cream with a plastic spoon.
It's not very fun, man.
Yeah, it's hard when it's frozen.
Yeah, I know. You don't get enough tension there.
I know.
And then there's another episode as well where we have a callback to a previous episode in the first season with Kondo's grandfather who broke his arm, and so he can't make udon anymore, and because he's trained at bowling. Which, if you recall, at his shop in the first season, he had a bowling alley in his. So it comes full circle there.
Right.
It's building on the joke.
Matt, one thing you missed with the Cinderella episode is that once Cinderella goes to dance with the prince says that he needs to find that girl so he can marry her, and a soldier says, Are you insane? and then he is executed for having a rational remark.
Yeah, I made note of that. I think it wasn't even so much he asked, "Are you insane?" He actually asked, "Are you sane?"
Oh yeah.
And there is one stepsister who is super buff.
Yeah.
She's just Nasuno, but she's super buff. And then there's another great episode where it takes place like it's at a children's live show at like a supermarket, which is something that happens a lot in Japan.
Yeah.
And and all the characters are having to play because we have see Bobby, the former Navy SEAL, who's also now a preschool principal from I think the first season as well, the second season, and they have to stall for time while Orange Man shows up, and so but all the kids are really bored and none of them want to actually be there, and they all complain that they want to play house instead. And at the very end, the orange hero shows up, but then tears her ACL, and the episode ends.
Yeah. I think my favorite is actually the first one from this season.
Oh, okay.
Where they all tried to do the high jump outside, and
right.
I don't know why, but something about how Konoe cannot do the high jump, and she keeps jumping under the bar, and it ramps up where at the end of the episode, the three girls are all yelling at Yuri because she's sitting in class and they see her and they want to distract her, so they're yelling, Yuri-chan, Yuri-chan, and she's like, stop, I'm in class, stop yelling at me. And Konoe tries to jump up to the second floor to mess with her, but she jumps straight into the wall in front of her because she can't jump. I don't know. It's just
there's a great visual gag during that episode. It's like a split second. I don't even understand where it comes from, but there's a very brief shot of just Konoe with giant legs, and that's it.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to do the high jump. There's
high jump, and that's one of Konoe's solutions is to just grow giant legs.
Yeah. I think that's about as much of this season as this season of TQ requires.
Right.
I would say So I'd say my favorite episodes are 61 and 68 if people go back and look at them.
Yeah, those were kind of my notes as well for those. It took a while to get to Namek. Commentary, I guess, on Dragon Ball, but
yeah, that was okay.
But I did appreciate. I did like the season ender where they were actually at Namek. I think I didn't like this season as much as past seasons, and I think it was because they had an enhanced focus on the not main girls, because we had a lot more Kondo and Tomarin, and they're just not. I don't like them as much as I like the other ones, and I realize that they're trying to kind of spice up the show because it's been going on, I think, way longer than they ever anticipated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Good note to end on. So, yeah, I don't know. That's what we have to offer this week from KoshienCast. So, without belaboring things any further, Matt, would you do the honors of hitting the credits for me?
Oh, I guess.
Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.